And I'll give you a prime example. An average house lot in Cayman right now, probably anywhere from $80,000 to $150,000. Now, when you take that in context, if you have a university graduate who spent 4 long, hard years in college, comes home, and if he or she is lucky to get a job, they're probably going to start at the bottom of the ladder, meaning making maybe $60,000, $70,000 a year, or less. Now, in order for you to purchase that piece of land, you got to go get a mortgage. It's probably going to take you anywhere from 10 to 15 years to pay off for that piece of property. Now, needless to say, if that property costs you $150,000, you want to put a $500,000 or a $600,000 house on that property to make it viable and valuable. There again, that individual, whether he or she, they have to go and get another mortgage. That's going to take them a good 25 to 30 years to pay off for it. So by the time that he or she can enjoy their house, they're pretty old. So you have to make sure that you all design your plan that is suitable for the young and for the old.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. This next question is specifically for Mr. Haroon. It asks, how does the recent influx of land purchases and subdivisions going to be handled? Do we really have a say in what happens next?
Thanks for the question, Donna. Through the area plans, you have a greater say. Because unfortunately right now, and again, we've said it before and sort of empathizing with the Development Control Board, is you've got lots that have already been cleared, but the rules that govern what gets built on those lots and how those lots then are built out are very discretionary. So to answer the question, it will depend on how that process moves forward. Whereas, I mean, it's fundamentally, once the rules are in place, then we can speak definitively as to how those lots will be built out, the type of developments that occur in those lots. But unfortunately, right now, we are in a bit of a vacuum. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to definitively give, with some level of clarity or definitiveness, this is what will happen to those lots. And again, I think, from my perspective, that again just drives home the point of how important it is to have an area plan put in place and to have those rules put in place.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add to that, Donna?
Sure, Mr. Pardo.
We see a lot of this in the eastern districts in Grand Cayman right now. There's a bit of an explosion of subdivisions there. We recently started asking for phasing plans, and we put restrictions that they can sell phase 1 and they can't start selling phase 2 until phase 1 is sold. So those are things that we have done, which is something that maybe you can develop in your area plan, right? Or the law can be developed in that way to make it a bit more rigid, as opposed to how we're kind of like putting it at our discretion, these conditions on at the moment. Another thing is you can't forget that by limiting subdivision lots means that if you stop doing it, means that the amount of lots you have is reduced, therefore prices go up. Supply and demand. If there's lots of demand and no supply, the price is going to be higher. So that goes against what Mr. Handel was just saying about how does a young person. I mean, he's 80,000. I don't know where he might not be 80,000, right? But most of the lots, even in the eastern districts now, 120 to 150,000, right? That's a lot of money, right? And then if you start, and that's right now we got a fairly good supply. If you start limiting that supply and stopping the subdivisions, all of a sudden that becomes 200, 250, 300,000. It's all about supply and demand. So there's a balance you got to hit there with making sure that not too many lots flood the market and making sure you have enough on the market to keep the prices at a reasonable level.
Thank you for your input there, Mr. Pardo. Another question from Slido asks, how many years will this new plan be valid for? Will the plan take population into consideration? And if so, what population size does the plan support? So 2 questions. How many years will this new plan be valid for? That's the first question.
Yeah, I touched on that. I think because of the 5-year plan review cycle, it's effectively comes to 5 years and then we would review it. So it might be that some area plans are still working and they still meet the vision that was established, but others might not. And so I think they're going to vary. Some might have longevity and others might need that kind of more immediate review. In terms of population figures, we don't have a set figure that we're working towards. Cayman is not a plan to society or community in that way. Its population growth is based on economic growth. And so we can really just plan using what's called performance-based planning, where we take the numbers that we do have, and I touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of the figures we have within the department about where growth in terms of development is happening. And then you just have to balance that growth with community infrastructure, so parks, public spaces, physical infrastructure in terms of electricity, water, road networks, and these sorts of things to ensure that you maintain quality of life standards.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question asks, how does selling each lot and developing over time work for maintaining the uniqueness and beauty of the Brac and Little Cayman? The question again, how does selling each lot and developing over time work for maintaining the uniqueness of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman?
I think the key there is, again, defining what is unique for the residents of Cayman Brac and what is unique for any particular area. Because, again, if you don't define the why, then you leave yourself open to any how, if that makes sense. So once you're able to define what is unique for a community, or what that community defines as being uniqueness, then it can ensure that the standards are in place to deliver that. But once again, if you don't define that up front, then uniqueness can change like every day of the week.
Mr. Whitaker?
Just adding to what the director just said, in Little Cayman, they're considering having an architectural group to study and see how they want the architecture of Little Cayman to be like. And that might be something that you all might be interested in. That all the homes has a unique factor about it. That you don't have one house looking this way and another house looking that way, or one house is pink and the other one is purple. You have something that is unique for that particular area.
If I can just add a little bit to that, that could also come about through policies and regulations. So there is a section in the planning statement about design, and it might be that it's very small things that we just require within new developments that ensure that a new house comes forward. And it just has some kind of architectural detail that responds to traditional. So there's kind of many ways to achieve that objective.
Another question from Slido, and then we'll come to you, sir. This is a very quick one. I think it's just a reiteration of what has already been said, but it asks, who has the authority in the sister islands?
Well, as it relates to planning matters, that would be the Development Control Board.
Okay, thank you. Sir, your question?
Director, I certainly appreciate your vitality for culture and start with why, and it's great to hear. Question, going back to what you had said about economic, I mean, obviously there's so many things that you guys have to deal with, just trying to figure out how to maneuver all these pieces, and obviously economic development is a big factor. You mentioned jobs as well. Is there anything in this plan to accommodate any kind of promotion or subsidies for economic development or opportunity zones or other areas like that for stimulating jobs or assistance for housing or something like that from the government or internal or external? So, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Not so much in terms of like subsidy, but I think obviously this is a physical land use plan, so from our point of view, it's about creating a physical environment to enable that kind of growth. So one thing that's definitely come up in Grand Cayman is a lack of light industrial spaces in terms of workshops and outside of the kind of traditional industrial area and the airport, kind of out more in the communities to support some of the town centres. That's a very specific thing that's been defined, and I'm sure each area would have other kind of unique growth opportunities, whether it's tourism or traditional commercial space. It might be retail space that's lacking within a given community. So I think it's just ensuring that there is sufficient land use zoning to accommodate those kinds of uses.
Mr. Whitaker?
In regards to your question, needless to say, I think over the past years, a lot of your young people here in the Brac, because of the lack of development from an economical point of view, that some of your smartest and brightest people has left the island and gone elsewhere. And I think that stuff like that, you all need to pay attention to, that you get the right development so that it will encourage your own people to stay on the island, that they can see it grow. In regards to subsidy, I know in Cayman, the government of the day has been very active in low-cost housing. And I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to, but what they're doing is they're making or developing energy efficiency houses that they can then resell to individuals who is having somewhat of a problem going to one of the big banks and getting financing, and then the government, I think, is financing it themselves through Caribbean Development Bank. So stuff like that, your representative might want to think about doing a similar thing here in the Brac as well.
Mr. Pandoy?
Tagging on about Mr. Whitaker said, I was thinking about similar things. For example, a house lot here.
Mr. Parker, if you could hold the mic closer to your mouth. Sorry, just hold it closer. Thank you.
I was saying, to tag on what Mr. Handel said, a house lot here will require 10,000 square feet, 100 by 100. And it works, but Cayman Brac is only 12 miles long. We're going to run out of those size lots after a while. I don't think I know about it, but looking down the line, I think what we can do with a bit of planning, we can downsize lots. For example, you got a 10,000 square foot lot. You put a 1,000 square foot home on it. That's 10,000 square feet occupied. If you had a 6,000 square foot lot or a 5,000 square foot lot, you could put the same house in it, and I'm sure it could meet setbacks as well. So I believe we need to start looking at that, downsizing the lots, and making more space in a sense. Not the volume space, but you would have more lots that you could build more smaller homes on. So his point again, what he said about people that can't build high-end homes, because people that can only afford a certain amount, they could be part of it again, of it as well. So I think that would be a good thing. I don't know the views of anyone else. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. I guess the zoning will then come into effect and deal with it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Captain Lawton. Any further comments from the panel before I move on to the next question?
Well, just to quickly say to the point of subsidies, as Richard said, the plan doesn't have anything specifically in terms of subsidies, but I think what the plan does do is a large expenditure that's made by governments, because certain levels of infrastructure is the remit of governments, building roads. So what the plan helps to do is focus the provision of that infrastructure to drive the most efficient use of that infrastructure. So right now, without a plan, you have a situation where a development occurs, and because it occurs in an area that doesn't currently have infrastructure, there's a huge cost that has to be borne to provide that infrastructure. So for instance, if a subdivision, again, if there are no rules against surrounding, how something like, say, a subdivision comes to being, and a subdivision occurs just simply because there was land available, But that then requires a developer, because of the lack of infrastructure, whereas if they located that development in a different location that was better suited for it, it might be able to tag on to existing infrastructure, thereby saving a tremendous amount of upfront costs. But if that development is put in an area that then has to translate into the provisions of development, that can easily translate into millions of dollars of infrastructure that has to be put in place, that cost then has to be recouped. And that will then find its way through the cost of land. One of the huge drivers of the cost of land, and the chairman spoke to it in terms of the provision of subdivision lots, is the amount of infrastructure that is required to actually make those lots viable. So if you're located in an area that requires the provision of a significant amount of roadworks, provision of utilities, provisions of water in areas where there previously aren't any, that cost alone could quickly triple the cost of a lot, which then affects just the ability for people to be able to buy land, for generations to be able to be in a community that they're used to, just by that simple act of not coordinating the provision of infrastructure with these projects.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions from the audience? Ma'am, please come up.
Hi, yeah, parks and recreation. Do you all have any plans in the future for, like, say, a national park here in the back, like the lighthouse or anything? Because I know right now you have a piece of property, I think it's a national park or whatever. It's just a piece that goes along the traditional trail up to the lighthouse, but it doesn't go to the lighthouse. So is there any way to ensure, or is this something we would have to write into our MLA about, or MP, sorry, about to see that gets in place? Because the lighthouse is one of our unique features here in the Brac. The high elevation, the highest in the Cayman Islands, as far as I know, and just the atmosphere and the landscape that's already there. I'm not talking about swings and this and that for children. No, like a natural park, national park.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I completely agree with you that it is a very unique, special place, absolutely, and it not only unique within Cayman Islands, but I think throughout this kind of part of the Caribbean. I'm not exactly familiar with what the extent of government ownership is there, so it's hard to say exactly what the kind of future plan would be, but I think as part of this process, as a community, you kind of coming together and putting forward your vision and your kind of hopes for that area would certainly steer decision-making in terms of what might happen there, what might happen in terms of government acquiring more land if that's necessary. As I said, I'm not familiar with exactly what extent of government ownership is.
And just to tag on to Richard's point, once the community is able to articulate that vision, that would then help the government in the acquisition of land. See, many times what we find in the planning process is, because that vision or that desire is not articulated, it happens on a case-by-case basis. So it's not until someone has bought the land, say, and I agree with you, the lighthouse is quite a unique feature, and I would say that I would believe that's something that every resident of Cayman Brac would love to see protected. And if we have a plan that enables you to sleep better at night knowing that that unique piece of Cayman Brac's heritage is actually protected, and it's not left that, well, it's on a case-by-case basis, that it depends on what's being proposed next to it. Oftentimes you hear people say, well, if there was a mechanism that we knew that this is what was important, we would never have proposed that project. But because there are no rules, it's sort of left to, well, we'll throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. And I believe as a community, we need to get beyond that so that we can say to the persons who are looking to develop, this is what's important to us, these are the areas that are important to us, identify to the government, in terms of, allocation of budget, directing resources to purchase of land, these are the areas that are important for us as a community that you focus on. And that's what this plan will give you.
Mr. Pardo?
Can I just add to that? If you look in here, there's actually a section with land for acquisition, that's designated for acquisition. So that's maybe something that the community can say we would like to see the government purchase this piece of land. And that's something for you to consider when you're looking at the area plan.
Thank you. Ma'am, please go ahead.
I hope none of you want a piece of land.
I'm a bit concerned about these large tracts of land, and not just the individual homes that are being built, but development areas. I left Florida many, many years ago, and back then they were really sticking it to them as far as environmental concerns to make sure that they had green space, places for bicycle riding, and that's something on the island that's really frightful to try and ride down the street on a bicycle. But if you have these large tracts of land that are being made into developments, is there green spaces can they be put into these development areas? A certain amount of property that's sold to individual people that qualifies that this demands green space, a communal garden, a small park for children to congregate in, bike paths, etc. Is that something that could be put into the plans?
Most definitely, and Richard can speak more to the details, but in terms of the open space zones, inclusion of multimodal aspects, because as you said, where are we going to place these open spaces? How do you actually get there? Is it the best use of land of placing open spaces that we all have to drive through? Or do we place open spaces within communities that kids can ride their bikes to, that they can walk to, that interact with schools, so that you have schools located where you have these open spaces, where you have these national sort of facilities that, again, we sort of create a symbiotic relationship and they help build upon each other. But yes, most definitely. And just back to your point in terms of, what was occurring in Florida. Again, what we find is when developers or persons looking to develop, once they can understand the rules, they can respond to those rules. And many times you hear, well, why are certain things not done? And when you actually have the conversations with the developers, they said, well, look, we respond to what we think the market is asking for us. And if the market doesn't put forward these things to say this is important to us, then we don't respond to it because it's just not even on our radar. But as a community, if you said the provision of open space, the provision of connected, usable open space is something that's important to us in costing out and laying out projects, they can factor that in. Because again, they're responding to the needs of the marketplace, which are in line with the needs and desires of the community. And they're not just simply saying, well, I'm sort of responding to a higher goal, which is, to Mr. Handel's point, well, clearly a lot of people are buying lots in the sister islands. Well, how do I respond to that? Well, I create lots. Versus, well, persons are looking to purchase lots in the sister islands because they want to be part of a unique community. As part of that uniqueness, they want access to green spaces. They want to know that natural features will be protected. They want to know that there's certain an architectural vernacular that will be put out there. So again, setting these rules enables persons, when they're contemplating these projects, to know, okay, what are the things that I need to be responsive to? And again, not simply filling a vacuum with what they think is being responsive to the marketplace.
Well, is there a particular formula for how many homes would, like 5 homes, 25 homes, that constitutes a development?
And those are the things that, again, in responding to what that vision is to the community, we can craft on a technical level. There's certain numbers in terms of, the distance that people are willing to walk to access facilities. So those are certain technical things that we can bring to bear. But again, you can craft and adjust the formula, and because the formula, for the most part, is dependent on the inputs.
Right. I'm saying this because I go back to visit family in Florida, and I see my cousin that lives up in the Homosassa area. Big wide expanse and really nice little retirement type homes, and they have like a little community center there. They don't even have to worry about bypass. I mean, it's just natural around there. So, but they do have like a little community center, and they have a little pool that these older people don't have to worry about the upkeep of their own personal pool. They have a facility that they can go to. So that's what I'm thinking of is I'm seeing the big tracts of land that are being developed past this. Well, here where the new high school's going to go, past the sports complex. But also I'm concerned, like how Simone is, about the large area of land that the goat farm was on. That's an area that would really concern me. So, and then I want to bring up one more subject. We were talking about clearing land. I live on the lower part of, well, I live in Southside Central, pretty much, and I've got a big span of space in front of me and to the side of me, and it's a constant. When you live alone and you live in a wooden home and you smell smoke, that you're up checking to see what's on fire, and generally it's somebody that's left something going up on the bluff, and it's actually been. I've had occasions when it's actually caught the side of the bluff on fire. And a couple of months ago, I actually had the entire area in front of my house. I woke up, it was a Sunday morning at 5 o'clock, and that was a simple case of the salt building up on the lines. And had I not gotten up at 5, they said that it had been burning for an hour. But I thought I was waking up to Armageddon. The whole area from the beach access by where Foots's house, towards where Foots's house is on the south side, down to in front of my house was all ablaze. And I mean, I was absolutely panic-stricken. I don't think I've ever been that scared in my life. But thankfully, the wind was going directly east, but it easily could have jumped the road. And it has. It was right up. If you go down there, you'll see it. It's right to the road. So when I'm concerned about these setbacks that you were talking about, I always thought that we should have a 20-foot setback on top of the bluff and below the bluff. There's so many things that's advantageous. First of all, we shouldn't have, with a 20-foot setback, we shouldn't have any fires jumping over the side of the edge of the bluff to, worry any of us that are down below. And then also you've got situations where rocks have fallen over from the top of the bluff. So a good 20-foot setback at the top and at the bottom of the bluff is a wonderful environmental path. They're no longer looking at sanctuaries worldwide for animals and their migrations. They're looking for migratory paths, and that entire bluff is a migratory path. And then you've got the road out front that the animals take to go to the sea. But just wondering if it can get that 20-foot setback above and below to help protect people that are down below from being burned up.
Thank you very much for your question. We're going into our last 10 minutes of the evening. If someone on the panel could just address.
Okay, I'll try to quickly answer that. In short, yes. And again, it goes back to defining the why and then figuring out the how. So, I mean, just to your point, so one of the challenges is because oftentimes we forget why a setback is there, and we just assume, well, it's to create a space between two buildings. Or, oftentimes you hear, well, you're just using land not very effectively because you're just leaving that land open. But if we understand the why and we say, okay, that setback is actually there to make sure that structures are spaced appropriately to protect against things such as fire. They're there to give a sense of openness. They bring a certain level of order to a development. They can be there to create green pathways. They're there to preserve wildlife pathways. But again, so once you define the why, you then understand why these things are important. Because oftentimes, because we don't define the why, things then get changed, because it becomes one of these things that, and you hear, oftentimes, well, the argument sounded good at the time, because no one, and back, to Andrew's earlier point, no one's understanding that historical perspective, and that's not codified in your regulations. So then it's literally left to somebody remembering, oh, well, yeah, we kept 20 feet because of this. And I think as a community, as you're developing and where you're going, you must define that. So it's not left to, will someone be in the room at a time who remembers that 20-foot setback is there, so that if a rock falls from the bluff, it's not going to fall in your pool, it's not going to fall in your house. Those are things that are tremendously important and need to be codified so that they're adhered to on an ongoing basis.
Just quickly on your first point, if you look on page 19 of the booklet, it talks about open space zones, and 24 talks about circulation transportation. So those are things that you mentioned that are in here that we would hope is going to going to be part of your plan for Cayman Brac.
Okay, we're going to go into our final 2 questions of the evening, and then we're going to wrap up. A second to last question asks, will the zones as defined in the statement be revised for each area, or for the Brac, will it be left to the DCB to decide how each zone will be applied?
So the planning statement sets and defines in broad terms what the zones are, but the actual specifics of those zones will vary area by area. So if you have, for example, a high-density residential zone, the kind of actual density, the building height, the setbacks will vary between Little Cayman, Cayman Brac, 7 Mile Beach. They all have different criteria, but the kind of theme of those zones would be consistent.
Okay. No? Okay. The next question, final question for the evening, asks, the plan refers to the final draft of the National Policy Framework. Has it been approved?
So the National Planning Framework was approved by the Central Planning Authority. It's not a document that decisions are based on. It's just that it's a collection of national policies that we've kind of put together, and that's driving the content of the planning statement and then ultimately each of the area plans. But it wasn't a document that required approval by Parliament. It's not that kind of document.
Okay, we're going to, Mr. Handel?
I would just like to say in closing, this is a golden opportunity for the people of Cayman Brac to shape your island the way that you want it to go. Having said that, we need your input, your involvement. It's not too often that you have a situation as this planning statement, and I'm begging you, please get involved and make Cayman Brac what you want it to be. It's a beautiful island. Please get involved and let it stay that way.
I know you're out of time. I just need to say that if you're going to do this kind of meeting for the community and want input, we need to know beforehand. This meeting was advertised 7 hours ago.
Okay. Everybody else on the panel, we have a minute for each of you to state to the community, what would you like to state to the community to help ensure the creation of a successful national development plan? 1 minute, Mr. Parado.
Well, I want to just, echo what Mr. Handel just said. One thing we haven't experienced tonight is skepticism this will actually happen. We saw that in West Bay and Georgetown. We feel that this will happen this time because we seem to have a lot of support from the government for it. Because we're doing these district plans, we're not biting off more than we can chew. It's a simple process where we can do 1-2 districts a year, and it's achievable as opposed to trying to do everything at one time, which is how the other previous attempts has failed. So I'm very optimistic, and I hope you all will get involved in the area plans and achieve what you want. That's all. Thanks for coming too.
Yeah, Captain Martin?
Just one more point I want to make with this lady that was referred to, the 20-foot setback. A very important thing that 20-foot setback provides is access to the fire truck that could have been coming to your house that morning or that night to make sure she can get at least 3 sides. So that's another reason that we really need it, or require the 20-foot setback.
Thank you, Captain Martin. Mr. Haroon, any final words?
Just to say that, just tagging on what the chairman said, the success of this plan will be driven, I think, by one thing, and that's you. And without you, we'll just unfortunately go the way that, people ask, well, why hasn't things been done before? And again, without that driving force of the people who, such as yourself, we're the ones who are going to be ultimately impacted by this. The lack of a plan will lead to significant impacts that will be thrust upon you as opposed to you driving those. So as I said, the success of this process will be driven by you.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, and then just very specifically, please visit the website. You'll find on the homepage there's a link to the feedback form. We try to make it kind of as clear as possible. So please read the document, fill in the feedback form. You can email us if you have more questions. But I mean, these events are great, and we appreciate the comments and the questions. I'll be making notes, but it's really your written feedback that we need to take the document forward. So please take a look and give us your input.
All right, well, we want to thank everyone here tonight for participating, as well as those who are listening on Radio Cayman. Your feedback, as I mentioned earlier, and everybody else has mentioned here, is crucial to what happens with the development plan and a sustainable future for the Cayman Islands. Again, if you have any additional comments, you can email plancayman@gov.ky or visit the website, that's plancayman.ky. You may also fill out or complete the feedback form there online. You've had your say here tonight, but it's important that you also put it in writing through that feedback form at plancayman.ky. Also, don't forget, for those who may not be here, encourage them to also go online to send their questions in via email, as well as to fill out that feedback form. You're also welcome to join any of the upcoming public consultations that are happening on Brac Cayman. You can listen on Radio Cayman if you'd like. The next one happens in Savannah Newlands. It's on the 25th of July. And then that's followed by a meeting in Northside on the 29th. Please note again that the closing date for your comments on the draft planning statement document is August the 6th. Thank you so much for being here. Be safe on the roads and have a great night.
Extremely well. Thanks, sir. Thank you for Simon sitting there. I'll start with wine.
You already have one.
And that concludes Radio Cayman's live broadcast of the planned Cayman meeting, the public consultation meeting as conducted in Cayman Brac.